What's up, guys? I recently beat Dark Souls 3, and today I'm going to be ranking every boss in the game based on what I think was the best encounter to the worst encounter. A quick disclaimer, this is 100% my opinion, so please feel free to let me know what you guys agree or disagree with in the comment section below. If you like these videos and want to see more, please make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that bell button. Let's get into it. We're going to start with Judex Gundyr. So Judex Gundyr is a very simple fight in phase 1. It's pretty much just dodge and roll, it's nothing crazy at all. However, when phase 2 hits, if you're not really prepared for it, it can get pretty hard, and I actually did die twice on this boss starting off the game, which is kind of embarrassing because it is the first boss in the game, and usually that's supposed to be the easiest. Overall, I would say that Judex Gundyr is a B tier fight. While we're on the topic of Gundyr, we'll go ahead and do Champion Gundyr. So Champion Gundyr you experience a lot later in the game. He is a lot more difficult than Judex Gundyr. His moveset is ridiculous. It's unpredictable in my opinion. It was a very fun encounter, and honestly, I think Champion Gundyr probably is just going to sit right above Judex Gundyr just based off of a difficulty level alone. We'll keep him in B tier for now. Next up, we're going to do Curse Rotted Greatwood. So Curse Rotted Greatwood was a very interesting encounter. The fact that you basically have to hit these spore-like things on the body in order to defeat it was kind of an interesting gimmick, I think. I don't think it was the greatest boss fight ever. The ads were a little bit annoying at the beginning, but I think overall it was a good fight, solid fight. I'm going to put it in C tier for now. Ancient Wyvern is a complete gimmick fight. Basically how it works is you just run past a bunch of ads, try not to die, and then you jump and execute on his head, and that's the whole fight. So honestly, out of all the options so far, it's definitely going to be the bottom of the D tier. On the other hand, Dark Eater Midir is kind of the ideal Dark Souls dragon boss fight. He's incredibly fast, super hard hitting, the fire breath just basically annihilates you, and overall it's a very, very, very difficult fight. So for now, I'm going to put Dark Eater Midir in A tier. Beacons of the Deep is a super interesting fight. I think the fact that you're limited to the amount of damage you can do to the boss by which ad has the, effect on it is super interesting. It's a very cool horde fight. Unfortunately, it's too simple for me to put it above C tier for now, just based on the difficulty. It's very hard to die to this boss fight. Basically just jump in, deal damage, jump out, and you kill it in like 30 seconds. So for now, Beacons of the Deep is going to go in the top of C tier. So Champion Gravetender and Gravetender Great Wolf. This is a very interesting fight. I really, really like this fight. I think that it's definitely an NPC fight. That's what it feels like for the first part of it. But once the Great Wolf comes out, it completely changes up how it feels, makes it 10 times more difficult. And I actually had quite a lot of trouble with this fight. So as far as just a difficulty scale alone, I'm going to put it in the top of B tier for now. It's not quite, it's not A tier. It's not on the same level as like Dark Eater Midir, but I'm definitely going to put it at the top of B tier for now. The Abyss Watchers. Oh my gosh, do I love this fight. This fight, for me, was hands down the best fight of the first, third of the game. I think that it can be very difficult depending on your build. If you're a magic build, it's probably pretty difficult because they're very aggressive. If you are a heavy weapon build, it's pretty easy because you can really knock them around. And if it's a if you're like a mid-tier heaviness weapon build, it can be pretty difficult, I would say. Definitely being able to execute them gives a complete different edge. It makes it a lot easier, but it is still very, very difficult. They're very aggressive, which I think makes it very difficult. And yeah, overall, it's great. I'm not going to put it above Dark Eater Midir, but I will put it right behind it as an A tier spot. Crystal Sage, for me, was a very, very easy fight. Basically, you're just going in, hitting the boss, and dodging magic. It's really nothing crazy, nothing special. It is cool, like the room that you're in when you're fighting the boss arena, that is a very cool area, I think. And the area after is really cool. It's a good like prerequisite. But overall, it's nothing fancy, nothing special. So honestly, I'm going to put it at the bottom of C tier. It's definitely not Ancient Wyvern level, but it's definitely bottom of C tier. Aldrich can actually be a pretty tricky fight. Similar to Crystal Sage, he does the whole thing where he has an attack phase, and then he goes underground and sprouts up somewhere else, and then you have to run to him, and he shoots magic at you. So phase 1 is pretty straightforward. If you can get up to Aldrich, you basically just get under him and attack him. Phase 2, it makes it a little more complicated because he does shoot out fire. He does fire attacks, which basically make it to where, you know, just standing under that idle spot and hitting him doesn't really work as well. So it is definitely more difficult than Crystal Sage. Overall, it's a pretty fun boss fight. The movement of the boss makes it definitely feel a lot more like, makes it feel like you're flowing with the boss as you're attacking him and as you're dodging him. So I really do think it's an interesting fight. And yeah, we'll go and put it in the bot. Actually, we'll put it right above Judex Gundyr, I think, in the B tier. Oh, Cyrios, to me, is a pretty poorly designed fight. It's one of those fights where no matter what you do, you're going to take damage. I really feel like it's impossible to play this fight perfectly. I say impossible, obviously it can be done, but it's very, very, very difficult. His attack patterns are super wonky. You get hit by his body all the time, so that deals damage to you. So it really just feels like you're constantly getting put down. It's not really a hard fight. I mean, I think I'm pretty sure I one-shot this boss, or I first attempted this boss. Definitely a D tier fight. Not as bad as Ancient Wyvern, because at least you actually have something to do other than dodge and run around. But yeah, this is definitely a D tier fight. Lord of the Boreal Valley is not an inherently difficult boss fight. It's actually very simple. His movements are a bit wonky, and it's very easy to take damage from his legs and his body. But it really is a very fun boss fight. Not to mention it has one of the most incredible soundtracks in the game. I think it's probably second best soundtrack in the game as well for the boss. Not that that really plays in the tier list itself. You know, his frost attacks are very difficult to dodge. It's very difficult in general to dodge the boss. I would give it a difficulty level of a high B. I think it's probably, oh man, you know what? Honestly, I'll put it in the middle of B tier just because I'm looking at the other ones and, like, you know, Aldrich might be a little bit more difficult. Champion Gundyr is definitely more difficult. Yeah, so we'll go ahead and put B tier. Half-Light is another one of those boss fights where the difficulty of the fight depends really more on the weapons that you're using than anything else. It is an NPC fight, so it does feel like kind of invasion style. If you have a very heavy weapon, it'll be a lot more easy because you'll be able to knock the boss around a little bit more, the NPCs around a little bit more. If you have a light weapon, it could be definitely a lot more difficult and a lot more dodging required. It definitely feels like throughout this fight, there's constant damage happening to you, so you definitely need to manage your flasks pretty well. Overall, it's a pretty fun fight. I wouldn't give it, definitely not higher than Crystal Sage. It's definitely going to be the bottom of the C tier for me for this one. I think the other fights are definitely more interesting than this one. High Lord Wolnir is a very cool fight. It's definitely a gimmick fight just based off how the fight works itself, right? So you go in there, you've got a big skeleton boss, and you've got to break the glowy circlets around his arms. It's really not a hard boss fight at all. It definitely feels super gimmicky. I'm not really a super big fan of it. Honestly, I mean, it's very hard to not one-shot this fight, I guess, as long as you understand the movement of Wolnir. So yeah, honestly, I'm going to have to put it probably at the middle of D tier. Maybe the bottom of C tier. Honestly, yeah, I'm going to put in the middle of D tier. Demon Prince or Demon in Pain, right? The two bosses before. This is a pretty difficult fight, I think. Demon Prince, so the second phase, Demon Prince, is incredibly aggressive, but it's also not that bad because you can really just get right under his gooch and just destroy him. So, you know, it's very hard for me to think about a good place to put him. I think that he's harder, definitely more difficult, definitely more interesting than Aldrich, right? I think he's definitely more interesting than Champion Gundyr. The fire damage alone is like makes it ridiculously difficult to figure out how to manage. Honestly, I would say he is probably going to be in between Champion Gundyr and the Wolf. Maybe not. Maybe I'll, you know, honestly, yeah, I'll have to put him above Great Wolf just from an interest standpoint. He's very interesting boss. Very, very, very interesting boss. Very difficult. We are down to our last 10 bosses. If you like the video so far, please like and subscribe and comment what you guys think so far about my tier list, what I think, where you guys would agree or disagree. And yeah, let's keep going. Lothric and Lorien, I think, is such a good boss fight. It's incredibly difficult. His moveset is very hard to predict and understand. I think that in phase 2, once you're having to fight both of them, trying to deal damage behind him makes it really complicated, really difficult. This is definitely an A tier fight, maybe even an S tier fight. It's hard for me to justify putting it in S tier, thinking, just because of how many other bosses we have ahead of us right now. So for now, I'm going to put him at the top of the A tier. Old Demon King was another one of those boss fights where I felt like I spent a majority of the time either running away from him or in his gooch, just hitting his taint. Which, it's not a horrible boss fight. It's definitely not the best. The mechanics of the boss are interesting. The fact that he just does so much fire damage, just an insane amount of fire damage, almost, constantly in the fight, is super interesting. And he does have a couple what feel like one-shot mechanics. I know I definitely had to try, I think, 3 or 4 times to kill this boss. So definitely wasn't the most difficult boss in the game. Overall, probably going to be a C tier boss fight for me. I think in between Deacons of the Deep and Cursed Rot. Dragon Slayer armor is a super, super fun fight. I got it in, I think, my 5th attempt, so it was on the higher difficulty level for me. I really think that his shield slam is super fun to dodge. It definitely feels very satisfying to fight this boss. Honestly, to me, he's an A tier boss. That might be controversial because I know a lot of people aren't a big fan, but to me, Dragon Slayer armor is an A tier boss. Probably bottom of the A tier. Yorm the Giant kind of sucks, I'm not gonna lie. It's a super gimmick fight. You basically run in, you grab your Bis weapon, and the weapon is basically just annihilates him. So you just get into the gooch and you just spam that weapon and he dies. That's how you do it. I think that if you could kill him without the weapon, that would be super, super difficult because he just takes an insane amount of reduced damage. So he could either be the easiest or hardest fight, depending on, I guess, your preference. Honestly, most people just go grab the weapon that's used for killing him. He had so much potential. I mean, he's in the cinematic. He's a really cool looking boss. But unfortunately, he just doesn't pass the B tier. Honestly, he doesn't pass the B tier for me. He's definitely in C tier. He's going to be below Deacons of the Deep. I think Deacons of the Deep is a more well-developed fight than Yorm. Pontiff Sulyvahn is a very well-developed fight. It really is. You have to fight him, and then you have to fight his purple shade that comes out to kill you. You kill the purple shade, then you kill the boss. It's not super difficult, but it is very satisfying, and it is a very fun fight. For me, Pontiff Sulyvahn lands proudly at the top spot of B tier. Dancer of the Boreal Valley, in my opinion, is the most satisfying boss to kill. I think that fighting him really does feel exactly like a dance. Dance is the perfect word to describe it. His movements are super, feels like synchronized with you throughout the fight. It's a wonderful fight. FromSoft did a really good job with it. This is going to be very controversial, but to me, Dancer of the Boreal Valley is an S tier fight. Sister Fried is the endurance fight of Dark Souls 3. It is such a long fight. I think it took me around 10.5 minutes to fully kill the boss. It's a multi-phase fight. Super interesting, very difficult. You basically have to it's all about managing your flask. If you can manage your flask properly, you can just dodge perfectly, then it's a very easy fight. If you're bad at that, then it feels basically impossible. It's perfectly engineered, I think. It's like just the right amount of difficulty to where it doesn't make you want to slam your head into your monitor or your keyboard, but also, you feel very satisfied whenever you kill it. So for me, Sister Fried is also an S tier fight above Dancer of the Boreal Valley. We are down to our last 3, and these are a big 3, actually. Some consider Nameless King the final boss of the base game, just because he was kind of a hidden optional boss for a while. Soul of Cinder is actually the final boss of the base game, and Slave Knight Gale is the final boss of the DLCs. Let's go ahead and start with Nameless King. So Nameless King was definitely the hardest Dark Souls boss when it came out. It was the hardest Souls-like boss. Some people had 200 attempts, 300 attempts. It was crazy. I killed the boss in around 10 attempts, but I did also play Elden Ring first. So I got a little bit more, I think, difficult bosses than Nameless King. Nameless King Phase 1 is awful to me. I think the fact that you can't really see what you're doing half the time, you can't really see what the boss is doing half the time, you're basically just fully relying on RNG. And Nameless King Phase 2 is an incredibly amazing boss fight. I mean, his moves are so fast, it feels like you can never get away from him. You don't really ever get a break, and it feels incredibly satisfying to kill. For me, though, I can't put Nameless King in S tier. I think Nameless King is the top of A tier. I really feel like Phase 1 ruins the fight for me. I hated dealing with Phase 1. Phase 2 was a lot more easy for me than Phase 1, which probably sounds kind of ridiculous because Phase 1 is literally just you hitting a dragon. I'm going to have to put him in the very top of A tier. He is the best in the A tier for sure. Soul of Cinder is an S tier fight for sure. Oh my gosh, this fight is so satisfying to play. He's incredibly quick. The fact that he changes his affixes, so he has like a magic affix that you have to fight. He has this really quick spear affix, this super quick sword affix. It's so crazy. It's a multi-phase fight, right? So you have to kill him once and you have to kill him all over again. That was super shocking to me the first playthrough. I really think Soul of Cinder, I don't know if it's top of S tier, I still have to think about it, but it is definitely in S tier. Slave Knight Gale was the hardest boss in Dark Souls 3 for me. I think that the fact that he does so much magic damage in his Phase 2 really caught me off guard. Dodging is challenged, right? Because whenever you dodge, you're basically going to get hit by his cloak if you're not careful. So it basically feels like you have to completely change your playstyle for this fight. Overall, a fantastic fight, really cool lore. I think Slave Knight Gale is going to get right below Soul of Cinder for me in the S tier slot. There we have it. That is my Dark Souls 3 boss tier list. If you agree with any of these things, please let me know in the comment section below. If you disagree, I also want to know what you guys are thinking. Thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe, share, turn on the bell button, all that jazz, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.